Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a review for the new Transformers Studio Series 86 number 10, the Decepticon Sweep. Now, if this toy looks very familiar, it's because just earlier this year we got Scourge as part of the Studio Series 86 line, and Sweeps, naturally being like direct clones of Scourge, would look very, very similar, if not identical. Now, they've changed a little bit with this toy compared to the Scourge figure. As far as new molding, they actually swapped the hands, right? Whereas his left hand used to be the open one, with the right being like a closed fist for, better holding weapons. They switched them around this time. So that's, one little thing that separates them. And then something that wasn't really apparent in like early leaked photos, but was confirmed. The Sweep does have a different color scheme from the regular Scourge toy. In this case, the blues used are much closer to the original Scourge toy than the more movie-accurate colors that the new Studio Series Scourge has. Now, there is some debate in the fan community over whether or not the color change is a good thing, because Studio Series is supposed to be, all about screen accuracy. And changing the Sweep's color would make them a little bit screen, inaccurate. But I think it was a good move from a marketing perspective. For one, if you own Scourge already, there wouldn't be a huge incentive to pick this toy up if it looked exactly like Scourge. I mean, aside from the, army building aspect, at that point, if you just wanted people to army build something that looks like Scourge, just, release more of that character. So it would be kind of weird to release this as a new release with, the only difference being that, a different hand is open now. And then, sadly, they didn't even retool the face, which, I wish they would have to help separate him a little bit. Different expression or something, but no, it's the Scourge face. But I think it's also a good idea because some people, like myself, do like the toy color versions of new figures. Those of us that have a bit of nostalgia for the old toys. So, if anything, even if you don't care about army building, you can just look at this as a toy colored Scourge, right? He serves that purpose. So I think marketing-wise, it was a good idea to make some changes and not just release essentially the same toy twice. With all that out of the way, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at the Sweep's packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll see the instructions, we'll take a look at the backdrop at some point, and then we'll see the Sweep itself in both vehicle and robot modes. Naturally, I'll be doing plenty of group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So the Sweep comes in your standard Voyager class Studio Series packaging. Get his number right here, 8610. Nice bit of artwork, which I think is just the Scourge artwork. I'm pretty sure it is. It's even got like the screw holes in it still. Then you can see the Sweep himself. Pretty decent sized Voyager. Not as big as Cyclonus, but bigger than others. See his blaster there. Big old noggin right here. Then on the back you get renders of the toy in both vehicle and robot modes. Now the renders make him look much closer to Scourge's regular like cartoon coloring, which I think is something that threw some people off till we got that like live stream reveal. Because from these, I would just assume he's exactly like Scourge. So that might have thrown some people off there. You can see he's got the Heralds of Unicron backdrop, same one that comes with Scourge, though doesn't make too much sense, right? Because that's supposed to be Scourge right there in the middle. This guy should be like one of these two in the background, but oh well, they're not really great about giving us much variety in the backdrops. They recycle these things a lot. Our flavor text here says, Unicron reformats fallen Decepticons into the Sweeps, deadly hunters created to track down the matrix of leadership. So, same thing with Scourge. They don't really get into exactly who this guy used to be. They like to leave it nice and vague. Which I guess if you're looking to avoid like heated fan debates in the forums, that might be a good idea. And then over here on this side, you just get more of a full body view of the character. Again, with all the holes and screw holes and all that crazy stuff from the toy. It's okay to make some artistic license, guys. You don't have to draw every little toy detail on there. All right, so there's packaging. Let's go ahead and open it up now. Okay, here's our instruction book for the Sweep. And oddly, it's not like folded along this panel line here. You got a little bit of the actual steps showing. They don't usually do that. All right, so you get a quick little how-to for attaching his Fire Blast effect to his rifle, then having him wield that. It shows you how to get him kind of more properly set up out of the box. And then we go straight into the transformation to his vehicle mode. Obviously, it's going to be the same as Scourge's, since they're more or less the same toy. placement for his rifle and fire blast effect in said vehicle mode. And then we also get the fun little nod to the movie with his head sticking out. So of course we'll explore that here in a bit. There's a render of that. So nothing new, no surprises if you already have Scourge, but still good to get the instructions. And here is the Sweep's vehicle mode, the old space boat as some people call it. And, you know, tooling wise, there's no difference between him and Scourge in this mode. You just have the usual little accents of like our thrusters, little blaster thing going on here. Rifle hanging out on the side, which is of course optional if you want to keep it a little more clean. And yeah, I mean, not a whole lot new to see here. Still got plenty of robot cable on the underside. Still got the 5mm ports for like thrusters, which is always a nice touch. Now, one thing that's interesting is that they called this guy, you know, toy colors, right? They said they went with like the toy colors. However, what I have here is the Titan's Return Scourge. Now, obviously it's not the original Generation 1 toy, but it was designed to look like it. And it uses more or less the same coloration from the original toy. And you can see here, saying the new Sweep has toy colors is a bit of a stretch because none of his shades match what we're seeing here. Now granted, I do believe the Titan's Return Dark Blue is just slightly too dark to match the original toy. It's kind of somewhere between this and this. But this really doesn't hit the mark at all. It's far too bright. And then your secondary blue, which is normally like a very pale light blue here, still has more of that purplish hue, very similar to what we see with the new Studio Series Scourge. So unfortunately, the claim that it's toy accurate really doesn't hold up, which is a shame. You know, I really believed them when they said it was the toy colors, because I wouldn't mind having a toy color Scourge. But it doesn't match really anything. It's just kind of its own thing, which is, I mean, fine, honestly. I wish they wouldn't have been so confusing and claimed it was something it wasn't. Now, we keep talking about him, so here he is. This is our Studio Series 86 Scourge. And like I said, same tooling in this mode, nothing really new to see. The biggest difference is just the primary blue color, because I'm pretty sure that the secondary blue, if it's not exactly the same, it is darn close. This might be a slightly lighter shade than this one, and that could just be due to differences in my exact copies, right? Maybe different batch of paint or something. So they are less different than I personally was led to believe based on that live stream, which is a shame. But there's still enough there to set them apart, right? You can quickly tell them apart and know which one is which. Another thing about that live stream that confused me is they kind of made a big deal about the fire blast effect here. I know just the way they worded it, it seemed like they were kind of presenting it as something new, like maybe a different fire blast effect than the one that comes with Scourge. But you can look at them here, and no, they're the same. It's the same piece. So I don't know why they drew particular attention to that. It's not new. It's still that same twisting purple laser thing. It does appear to be a lighter shade of purple this time around. Again, ever so slightly, and may just be down to individual copies. But yeah, I don't know why they treated it like it was something new or exciting, because it's just the same old, same old. Here's a quick look at the silly third mode with the head sticking up, and we can see him compared with Scourge. Again, no molding differences here, just different shades of blue. And I obviously covered this mode when I did Scourge's review, but I'll just kind of reiterate. I think it came out pretty well. It doesn't exactly mimic how Scourge's head just kind of popped up in the movie, because you have to alter quite a bit of the shape of the vehicle mode to get it to do this, but it's still not bad. It's a neat little Easter egg that, kind of like the Soundwave lamppost mode, they didn't have to include, but they went out of their day to actually engineer it to make it work, so I dig it. Now we get our Sweep in its robot mode, and this is where you can see the new tooling that's been done. The hands have been swapped, and, you know, I say swapped, it makes it sound like they just moved around, but like, no, they have to be molded differently, right, because hands are symmetrical. So they actually did go out of their way to tool two separate, you know, pairs of hands for this mold. You have an open hand, both left and right, and a closed fist, both left and right. And then, you know, they just do one or the other, depending on which, you know, character they're making, either Scourge or the Sweep. So it's a small touch, but at least does help set him apart from, you know, his master Scourge. Now again, I know I said this before, but I really wish, just to help distinguish these two a little more, they would have retooled the face a bit. Like, really just to give it like a different facial expression or something. It would definitely help it feel less samey. But it wouldn't alter the character's design to, further move away from the fact that they are supposed to look identical to each other. So that's just my personal feedback. It's a small nitpick, but a retooled face with, maybe a sinister smile or something, or maybe a more neutral expression, I'd say it would have made this a little bit better. Now, as far as our tolerances, everything still feels good. Feels just like it did on Scourge. Everything's tight, but not too tight. Everything looks good. This ankle has a tendency to not want to stay tilted. Wants to pop back into place. Kind of annoying. May limit your posing a little bit, and that might just be my copy. This one's fine. So I'm thinking it's just a specific tolerance issue, so I won't dock the design itself for that. It could just be my copy. I tend to get pretty unlucky with QC issues. All right, so yeah, he looks pretty cool, right? He could easily pass for either Scourge or an unnamed sweep. So if you do prefer this particular shade of blue over the one that comes with Scourge, you might just buy this toy and consider that your Scourge toy. Here again is our Titan's Return version in its robot mode, so you can really compare what the toy colors really look like versus what we get. Now, I already talked about how the shade of blue really doesn't match at all, but you'll notice that they didn't do anything to change the color layout between this guy and the Scourge version to help, make it look more toy accurate. And I mean, obviously they didn't want to, right? They were trying to change as little as possible because they didn't want to have people too upset about screen accuracy, right? So personally, I'm far more interested in getting a toy color Scourge than I am a generic sweep that just has like one slight difference in the shade of blue. Because again, I mean, if you want an army build, just buy more Scourges, right? Like, I don't think we needed a separate release just for that. So yeah, I wish they would have gone a little more whole hog and given him the full toy accurate treatment with like the mostly dark blue body, because I don't think it looks terrible. I think it looks great for what it is. Now, I know that Titan's Return Scourge peg warmed like crazy alongside Titan's Return Blur. And I think a lot of that is the fact that they were both released at the same time, and they're both predominantly dark blue. And in his case, it made sense because he was mimicking the original toy. Blur, I don't know what they were going for because there was no version of the character that was ever that dark in color. But I think having those two on shelves together made them very unremarkable looking, very plain. And they just shelf warm really hard, which is a shame because I actually think they're both really great molds. I love the Blur mold. It's one of my favorites that came out of Titan's Return. It's so versatile. It's been, reused in different toolings. The Scourge one, I'm not, as crazy about, but I still think it's really good. The only issue I've ever really had with Scourge is that his head tends to be a little floppy in the socket, but other than that, it's fine. But obviously, he's a headmaster and he is rather undersized, so he doesn't scratch everybody's itch for a Scourge toy. But for the time, he was really good. However, he does demonstrate, again, that the claims of, toy accurate colors really fall very short with this new release. Now, here's a fun little shot of our new sweep along with the recently released Generation Selects Galvatron. Now, while I personally debate the use of the term toy colors for this sweep, because I don't think he really lives up to that, it's still, fun to see him with, like, the toy colors version of his leader. Now, obviously the shot feels a little incomplete, there's no Cyclonus, but if rumors are true, I know it's been, like, leaked and rumored out there, that we are getting, like, a Cyclonus's Armada figure at some point, which I imagine will just be another quick, recolor of the Cyclonus toy, much in the vein of this sweep. Now, what they're going to do with his colors, I don't know. I would not mind seeing, a toy colors version of the Cyclonus mold. Hopefully more accurately toy color than what this guy portrays. But I do, look forward to seeing that, and I, will definitely be doing a shot of these two along with that toy if and when it comes out. And for our final comparison, here is our Studio Series Scourge once again. So you can see the difference in the hand tooling. I got the open hand flipped around, close hand flipped around, all that. And then a different shade of blue. And that's really it. you might like that. You might say, well, this is what I want because they're supposed to look identical, or you may not like that and be like, well, this just kind of feels like the same toy. Honestly, the difference between these two reminds me of Classics Starscream, and then there was one released in, I think it was like was it the '08 Universe line or maybe early Generations, which was incredibly similar looking. Like they just kind of changed some hues and, you know, small details and like called it a new figure. It was very dissatisfying. She's like, wow, this feels almost exactly like the old one. Might as well just call it a reissue at this point. So I kind of get the same vibe here. At least he's called a different character and he's numbered differently. He's not just Scourge again. So yeah, it is what it is. Personally, I think I like Scourge more than the Sweep. I really just prefer his shade of blue that's used. It's more appealing to the eye. This one's a little loud and kind of contrasts heavily against the rest of his colors. I'm not as crazy about it. If they had made his blues closer to the original, I think I would like it more. In fact, this little bit right here on the chest, that's about the color you'd want, where it's painted that darker blue. If he was that, but like everywhere, I would like him a lot more than I do. But as he stands, personally, I think the actual Scourge toy is the better figure. So if I were, you know, the kind of person that wants to army build and buy a whole bunch, I'd probably just buy a bunch of him. But of course, my, you know, thoughts on that color are completely subjective. I'm sure there are people out there that actually prefer this shade of blue. I just don't happen to be one of them. And before I forget, which I am unfortunately want to do with these backdrops, here is the Sweeps backdrop, and it is exactly the same as Scourge's. The only difference is the little number right here showing a 10. But it's the same, you know, grid pattern out in space. You got kickback and shrapnel being reformatted into sweeps in the background. And it's a cool enough background image, but again, doesn't really work for the Sweep because it should be Scourge right in the middle of the shot. Right? Like the guy in the middle was definitely Scourge. So, you know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's not surprising either because they're very fond of reusing these backdrops. Like once they create one for a certain scene, they'll just keep reusing that no matter how much sense it makes, you know, from a display perspective. Like how all of the Studio Series Constructicons came with the exact same image of the battle at the pyramids. Well, it's like, well, they couldn't all be standing in the same spot, you know? So that's a little... It's unfortunate. I wish they would invest a little more money in making each of these more unique, especially when it's between different characters. I mean, if it's like just two different versions of the same character, right? You got like regular Bumblebee and Clunker Bumblebee, which is like the same toy with rust spots. I get reusing the backdrop. But when it's separate characters, it'd be nice if they could have done a perspective shift and, you know, centered the shot more on one of these two characters here. And maybe show, you know, Scourge being kind of reformatted off to, you know, one of the sides. Would have been cool, but, you know, again, I wasn't hoping for that because I knew it wasn't going to be that. But it does at least solidify the idea of if you want to buy this guy as your Scourge, the background will be appropriate for that. So, you know, there's a bright side to it, a silver lining, if you will. And this completes our look at the new Transformers Studio Series Sweep. Now, overall, I think the toy is fine. As I said, it's not my preferred version of this mold. I do like the regular Scourge's colors more. If he had been true toy-accurate colors, I really, really would have enjoyed this guy. I mean, it doesn't feel like enough was done. You know what I mean? Like, I've criticized the color usage, you know, both the shade and the placement. You know, if you're going to go toy colors, really properly do toy colors. Or, you know, at the very least, they could have retooled the face. I'm left somewhat dissatisfied by this. But that's just me personally as somebody who already owns Scourge. I think this toy is great if you didn't manage to pick Scourge up when he was, you know, current on shelves and, you know, he's too expensive on the secondary market and you just want to have some version of that, he's fine for that. You know, he's just going to be a little off-colored from how he appears in the movie. And then, you know, the hands being swapped, that's not really a big deal at all. I mean, technically both hands can hold the rifle. This one just doesn't hold it as well, but you still have the options. So I think he's not going to be for everybody, especially since most people that wanted to army build Sweeps just already went out and bought a bunch of Scourges, which is part of the reason he's so hard to find. I don't know how many of these they're going to pick up once they already have, like, you know, 5 different Scourges, but we'll see. Never underestimate the desire of fans to army build. Some people spend a lot of money doing that. I mean, have you ever seen like an Omega Sentinel collection? Ooh, very expensive. So yeah, overall, I think he's okay. I think he is, by a small margin, the inferior version of the two, but he's still worth picking up, especially if you don't already have Scourge. Of course, that is just my take on this figure. Now I want to know what you all think of this toy. Do you like it? Do you think it's better than or worse than Scourge? Do you like the changes that were made to this toy, or would you have preferred less changes, more changes? Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the new Transformers Studio Series 86 Voyager class sweep. And with all that said, I will see you next time.